Zimpaper's television network, your show on all things health and developmental, because your health is your wealth. My name is Robert Mkundiwa. Now today we continue on a trajectory that we started last week and shall be running for 2 episodes more in this series Beyond Today. We are putting the student on the COVID-19 agenda. This week we continue looking at how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted on especially tertiary students. The youth have been largely neglected when decisions around COVID-19 were initially made and have literally been talked down to and had ideas and often policy foisted down their throats without their contributions. They are saying no more. They are saying nothing for students without students. Now on my panel today I am joined in the studio by 2 esteemed gentlemen, and they are people that matter in giving that voice to the students which they yearn for. Now, I could introduce you, but I'm just going to ask that you introduce yourselves, gentlemen, who you are, what you do, and why you're passionate about our students. I'll start with you, sir.
Thank you very much, Robert. My name is Professor Fanuel Tagwira. I'm the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, Innovation, Science and Technology Development. I'm very passionate about the student, as you know, because I've spent most of my life working with students, from being an academic as a lecturer, to being a dean of a faculty, becoming a vice chancellor at Africa University, and now I'm in the ministry working with universities and colleges. And at the center of all this is the student.
And I will tell you today, you shall be heartened to know that a lot of the packages, a lot of the students that we talked to are actually from Manicaland, and certainly you shall have that connection back to where you were. I'll move on to the gentleman, second time around, finally having you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Robert. Jimmy Wilford is my name. Currently the Executive Director of SAYWHAT, Students and Youths, working on Reproductive Health Action Team. SAYWHAT being a platform for students, for them to add their voices on matters to do with their sexual and reproductive health in general, and looking at public health in particular, looking at around how young people can also participate and add their voices in terms of addressing their public health concerns. Yeah, my thrust and also my passion is on making sure that the students, especially those students who are coming from the marginalized communities, those who are quite vulnerable, are afforded an equal chance to access education, regardless of their background. Even right now under the COVID pandemic, how those particular students are also being able to be afforded the chance to continue their studies. So that on its own is a major concern to me, and I'm privileged to have been leading such a youth organization that is also giving the students a voice when matters to do with their sexual and reproductive health.
Well, thank you, and it's always a pleasure having you. And of course, today we're also going to even tapping into your own personal experiences as a student as we go forward. Now, thanks to our partners today, SAYWHAT and the Swedish Embassy in Zimbabwe. We're also going to be having somebody calling in, the guest that we're going to have, and that is from Manicaland. We're going to be having Esnati Sibanda, and that's going to be a live call, and she's actually watching and following as we speak, and she's going to be asking questions relevant to the both of you gentlemen, and of course on issues raised today. So be alert for that, because the students are watching and they're going to ask. Now, questions have been asked as to what SAYWHAT actually stands for, and I looked that up today, and it's Students and Youth Working on Reproductive Health Action Team. Now you know. Now, the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic has seen countries, including Zimbabwe, enforcing lockdowns and has worsened the plight of the student. It becomes critical for government to actively involve the student in its interventions to contain and fight the virus. Scientific interventions alone are not enough to fight this war. Now, the Heartbeat team had the opportunity to interview students who shared their lockdown experiences, and we shall be sharing those today, of course, at the behest of SAYWHAT, who actually wanted to get into the communities and see what the students were experiencing. Now, they have shared stories of fear, anxiety, uncertainty, and challenges that have come with, for example, e-learning, amongst other things. We also caught up with foreign national students who were locked down in Zimbabwe and could not travel back to their countries. Now, in today's episode, we also continue with the discussion on the pragmatism of e-learning among other issues affecting students. And that's very important because that's where the world has moved to. Now, perhaps before we kick off the show, let us look towards what some of the fears students had when we talked to them in Mutare, for example. Now, the first person we're going to listen to is a student called Tafazwa Chiduku. She is from the Manicaland State University, and she talks of the anxiety and the uncertainty, and of course e-learning, which we were talking about, and of course she also tells us her prayer to government.
Since the 26th of March, I haven't been able to continue with my studies because of the lockdown. And nationwide, you would notice that most motels, lodges, and hotels have been shut down because of the lockdown. Not many people want to travel during a national crisis and stay in a hotel because they're not sure whether they'd be staying in a clean environment, whatnot, even though you can assure it to them. My program was supposed to be 4 years, but now I'm not so sure. And I'm getting pretty anxious about having to delay my graduation or like having to pay more fees because I had paid my fees for this semester. But it seems like the months are just wasting away because of the lockdown. As a youth, I've been affected socially because there were things or there were scenarios in my life that I would burden face to face with my friends, have a shoulder to cry on. But now I can't travel to see my friends because I'm also afraid of contracting this virus. And I can't go out and take the load off, burden, or even socialize with my peers. Yeah, but also another positive effect to that was that SAYWHAT provides platforms on WhatsApp, such as groups like Web for Life, there's Mugota, yeah, and we get to interact in that way. So even though there's a negative side, SAYWHAT has provided a positive one, that we can still interact through social media, even though we can't see each other face to face. As someone that had been used to seeing people all the time, to just have it cut off cold turkey is not easy, because for example, SAYWHAT provides condoms for free at school. Now, if I need to engage in sexual activities, I'm going to have to go into my pocket and buy whatever I need. Or if I'm not fast thinking, I'm just going to do without it. I'm just going to yekedero it. And that's also going to affect me as someone that was used to going to school and having those things for free and having peer educators talk to me whenever I'm feeling down and low. And for some people, they might even go into depression. Or some people I've been talking to have been going through insomnia because they don't know how to handle the day and the night, because it's not the same. There's no Monday or Sunday, it's just every day is every day. The concept of e-learning now is very controversial, but my take on it is that some people can manage well without having someone stand in front of them. Modes of learning are very different. I think that's why we are provided with Wi-Fi at school for people that can learn via the internet. And some people will need to have a lecturer or a professor stand in front of them and talk to them. So people are very different, and to put everyone on that platform to say you must learn via the internet is not fair, because some people, that's not how they learn. Some people learn by reading, and some people want someone to hammer it down physically and face to face and tell them this is this. And when they have questions, they can raise their hand and ask and have it broken down to them in a way that they can understand. And also, there's also the issue of students having to buy internet or prices hiking. That's going to affect a lot of children that are coming from different kinds of homes. Imagine coming from a setup where your parents, you watch them fight physically last night, and you go onto the internet on May 1st to find out that Econet has increased their bundles from $400 to $1,300. That child is going to suffer. So this e-learning thing needs to be taken with a pinch of salt, because it's not for everyone. They should try and close the time gap. There are students whose graduations were cancelled, delayed, that for students that had paid their fees, they should waiver them for whenever they open schools and not have them pay once more, because there was an incident at University of Zimbabwe where they said that they were taking their students' fees for this semester to take them to the Ministry of Healthcare and Child Services to help with the crisis. But that wasn't a willing contribution. So my prayer to the government is that they give back the students their money so they can learn for the next semester whenever that semester is.
Well, I have just unleashed an atomic bomb on you two gentlemen, because that woman, she was a ball of energy. She knew the issues and she spelled them out, and she touched on a range of issues. E-learning was there, sexual and reproductive health and rights, the mental well-being of students was there as well, and there was really a plethora of things that she touched on, and I could see you smirking, smiling, reacting, Prof. What could you break that down as her permanent secretary? She's just told you this. This is phenomenal feedback.
Thank you very much, Robert. Let me start by saying I think the most important and wisest decision that Zimbabwe ever made was to lock the nation down. I know that students are frustrated because they want to come out, they want to do things the way they've been doing, but this was the wisest decision that His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Dr. Idi Mnangagwa, made, because he did that, we are where we are. We should be having very high numbers in terms of people who are already affected by COVID-19. But because we locked down early, we are able to control the number of infected people, stop people from coming in, and make sure that when they come in, they are actually screened and tested. That was a wise decision. But of course, whenever you have a pandemic, you cannot expect that your life will continue to be the same. It can't be the same. Look at Europe, look at America, look at China. Everybody's talking about, having to stay in the house, having nothing to do. Some are singing from their windows. Yes, that's what happens. When a pandemic of this nature happens, which doesn't happen often, it requires people to do extraordinary things. And that extraordinary thing was the lockdown. So I think if we take that as a starting point, that we've been saved from having so many people going into hospitals, and in the process, of course, our freedoms were limited, and understandably so, because if you don't do that, then you will pay in another way. We're going to pay through many people dying. But I think you will agree with me that if you look at the whole region, Zimbabwe is doing way much better than a lot of the countries that are surrounding us because of the decisions that we took as a country.
Well, certainly, and we do see that our numbers are coming in dribs and drabs with regards, of course, new contractions, which is a plus on the side of COVID-19. However, your children are saying, what happens after this? Because while we're in lockdown, we are not in sexual lockdown, for example. So we're not getting COVID numbers, but we're getting STI numbers. We're getting probably HIV and AIDS, because I'm not going to, if I'm locked down at college, I'm not going to get a letter to say, well, you know what, I've run out of condoms and I need to go past the police and the soldiers just to get a pack. And she did say that one thing she would contemplate is just going straight right in, as she put it, in another way. But those are consequences which are also health related that may actually be a bigger bomb than what we've managed to make sure does not detonate. How do you look at that from, for example, what you said from the sexual and reproductive health and rights bit?
Well, I agree with you. Every time when you have a crisis, a health crisis, for example, there are always negatives and positives. A classic example that I've heard about was when West Africa and the central part of Africa were hit by Ebola. In the process of controlling Ebola, other people, of course, were dying from malaria. And they found out that there were more people who died of malaria in that year when they were controlling Ebola. So you always find that happen. But in the case of COVID, this is a devastating pandemic, which you cannot compare with anything. And I think most of the challenges that people are talking about really have to do to some extent with, are you able to control yourself? Are you able to take self-responsibility? One of the things we teach our young people in universities and in colleges is that be in charge of yourself. Whatever situation you find yourself in, try and make sure that you don't allow the circumstances around you to overtake you in terms of the decisions that you make. I appreciate students are locked down. Fortunately for most of them, they are locked down in their own parents' houses. And there are very few who are locked down in institutions. And we are saying, if you are in the comfort of your mother and father's house, what better place could you be? Yes, you can't go into town. Yes, you can't go and see your boyfriend. But you have food to eat. You have people to talk to.
Jimmy, you have been around on these fact-finding missions, and you've seen these students. You've actually even seen students who contracted COVID-19 in some of your interactions. But going back to this particular issue of SRHR, you are teaching kids to be responsible for their bodies, for the decisions that they make, as the Prof is saying. But we are human and sexual beings. What do you take from the SRHR presentation or plea that we heard from Tafadzwa there?
Okay, firstly, Robbie, I will possibly engage Prof on some assumptions that might be there in terms of how these students are locked down. It can be an assumption, Prof, that students are locked down within their parents' homes. See, there are some who are locked down within distant relatives, simply because they were given a short notice, about 3 days, for them to travel to their respective homes. It was difficult. And also, no one is disputing that the decision that was taken by the government to lock down was bad. No one is disputing that. The concerns being raised by the students is around the inclusion of the students when the decisions were being made. The clarity from the ministry in terms of what is going to happen in terms of my tuition fees. I was supposed to be graduating. What becomes of my graduation period? What becomes of... At one point you said you were at Africa University. We have students who are foreigners. Yes. They come here on study permits. Yes. What becomes of their study permits in terms of if we are still locked in and nothing is being communicated by the parent ministry? These are the concerns that are being raised by the students. Not that they are complaining about the lockdown, but they are saying, why can't you really include us, putting us on the agenda and take our concerns on board when we are making these decisions? For instance, when the e-learning, possibly selective institutions have been introducing e-learning, the students are complaining about the data, the cost of data. They were accessing Wi-Fi when they were at college. Yes. But now they're at home. In the comfort of their home, there is no internet. Yeah. In that comfort, there is no internet. The data has gone high. The parents are informal traders. They are not trading. There is no income coming on board. These are the concerns that the students are saying. We want our parent ministry to speak to us. Okay. Yes, to what you are raising, Robert, in terms of sexual and reproductive health rights. Indeed, the concerns are coming from the students in terms of mental health, saying, no, I cannot go and see my boyfriend. So the question was, when you are looking at a college environment is not only there to impart academic knowledge, but again, there is that social interaction, social growth that happens. The question is, what is being done in terms of ensuring that there is social growth of a student? Not necessarily learning. Yes, you can learn while you are locked down in your parents' house, but what happens to the social development of that particular student?
Thank you very much. I think all those are very important concerns, and I'll try and go through some of them and explain what it is that is happening. Firstly, let me say, if you remember how the lockdown started, we informed our universities and colleges that we're going to close because of the coronavirus. And the students were given an opportunity to go home, right? What I would agree with you is, of course, nobody knew how long that would take. And so somebody probably would say, I'm not going home, I'm staying in the house where I'm staying at school.
And sorry, if I could just interject.
Yes.
There's that length of time, but
Yes.
also, really, here in Harare, people are saying 3 days to stock up food was not enough, let alone 3 days for someone to leave Africa University to go back to South Africa, to Johannesburg. That's another thing we also want to know.
Yes.
With regards to the time frame.
Yes, but if you look at the stocking up of food, is that even during the lockdown, government has been very clear. Everybody is allowed to go out and buy food. No one was told you can't go to buy food. I
think I just raised that because I was saying if going to the shops in 3 days was not enough.
Yes.
Imagine how preparing to go back to South Africa, to South Sudan would have been for a student.
Okay, I will come to that. So we went on the lockdown. We were not sure how long it was going to take. But we want you to know we have not been seated doing nothing. Education as it is today is going through a totally different trajectory from the one we thought it was going to go through because of the COVID pandemic. And what has been happening is that the ministry has been working very actively with the Vice Chancellor on these very issues that you are raising right now. What's going to happen to the students? How are they going to finish their programs? How are the students who were in their final year going to be able to write their final exam and be able to go out so that other new students can come in? How do we ensure that we finish the semester that we were currently in so that we are able to prepare for the coming semester? We've been asking each other those questions, and we have been having Zoom meetings with vice chancellors, with principals of colleges. So we have been going through a process of preparation. One of the things we have agreed upon is that, and I'm sure if you remember, the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education, Innovation, Science and Technology Development, Professor Amon Muruira, actually said in the Herald of the 28th, we have taken a decision that we are going to start online learning in all our institutions. And therefore, we have asked the institutions of higher learning to start preparing online learning materials, ensure that the facilities are in place for the students to be able to start. And when the time comes and we have been given permission to begin the learning process, surely we are going to make an announcement to all the students and explain to them what exactly will be taking place. Online and distance learning is not a new thing. If you look at ZOO, that's what they have been doing. If you look at other institutions overseas, that's what they're doing. I have a daughter who is doing postgraduate studies at one of the Ivy League institutions in the USA. From the time they had COVID-19 in California, she has been studying from her house. I speak to her every morning, and she is on Zoom. In the evening, she is on Zoom, continuing with her lectures, with the lecturers, discussing with other students. These are the facilities we are trying to put in place so that our students can continue with interactions on Moodle, Google platform, with other students, with their lecturers. But we are also very much aware that not every student has internet connectivity.
I was about to say there's Crescenzia
Yes.
in Mzarabani who has had to go back to Mzarabani, who encountered the World Wide Web only when she went to her university.
Exactly.
And is now back at her energy poor setting, no
Yes.
electricity,
Yes.
no running water, never mind data.
Yes.
So and she's not Ivy League, she's Mzarabani League.
Believe me, we are very much aware of that. I came from a poor family, and I know what it means to have very little. And we are working very hard to make sure that no student is left behind as much as possible. You know, Zimbabwe has been doing well in terms of trying to achieve Sustainable Development Goal number 4, which is ensuring access, quality for education for all the students. And we want to make sure that those students you are talking about are not going to be left behind. We are working with our institutions to put in place facilities that will also allow those kinds of students to continue learning.
We shall continue with this because a lot of the students are going to be touching on roughly the same things as we go and see their presentations. Yes. But I think before that, I just wanted to touch on an issue of our poorer students. And this is the greater number of people that we saw out there. And you shall see that a lot of my presentations from the students are going to be talking about that sort of poverty. Now, a student is more than just being a sexual being. And a student is not only a young person. A student can actually be a family man who has other responsibilities over and above studying. So it is worse when you are somebody from a land from far, far away and you have to be away from your family thanks to a government-enforced lockdown. So now we're going to see Maka. Maka is at the Manicaland State University of Applied Sciences, and he speaks about the shock. And he's in his final semester and he's wondering whether he's going to finish. He was supposed to finish in June. He's talking about those challenges as well. So let's see what Mecca had to say.
I came here on government scholarship. Government of Zimbabwe and government of South Sudan, they had an agreement on a number of 150 students. I happen to be one of them, and I'm doing mine engineering. You know, there are some events that take place with the shocking actually. When you heard something that is unexpected and you have no control over that. What comes into mind now is, what should I do? The first question that I asked myself that time was, what if they log it down throughout 12 months? What will I be doing? So with those questions, you don't have answers, by the way, because even in South Sudan, there is lockdown. Everywhere there is lockdown. So the only way is just to forget and assume that you have nothing to do. It has affected me badly in the past 2 weeks of lockdown. Let's say the 21 one. Even 14 and 14, they have no effect now because I'm now getting used to it. But the first 21 days, I actually feel bad. I lost appetite. I was thinking of a lot of things. Why would I be locked down here? I even proposed, saying to my team, I say, no, guys, if this lockdown continues, let's arrange with the embassy to take us to South Sudan. Because we don't know when will this coronavirus issue get finished. Not only here in Zimbabwe, but all throughout the world. What made it bad to me is my last semester. When I started here, I started in 1-1. 1-1 seemed to be normal to me. Up to 1-2, up to like Musa knows how we started. But reaching at the final point now, somebody, and there is an event that come and block. My hope was, I actually arranged, if I finish in June, I will graduate in July, day 10 of July. And then from next day, either day 11 or day 12, I will be ready to fly back to South Sudan. But now there's nothing. I don't even think there will be exam, or there will be graduation, or there will be what. You see now, I'm just hanging up somewhere, somehow. We are actually 4. There are those 2 plus 1 who is sleeping inside there. We are the only one living this. Because during the semester you find that a lot of students here. But during the lockdown, everyone went home. Those who got no home to go, we remain here. Actually, school wanted us to go to Gweru. Then it was me who said, no, going to Gweru is not a better option. Since this coronavirus thing is something to do with the connection and so forth, there are a lot of numbers that side than here. So I said, in terms of safety, we can be safe here than going to Gweru. In our staying this side, we had a challenge of, we used to cook by ourselves. We had a challenge of transport this side. Like on Friday, I walk here, I got a lift from the landlord here. Then from town now I have to walk with my 5 kg of gas tank. From town to here is about 7 or 12 something kg. No transport, no what, I had to walk that distance up to here. You see, those are the challenges now.
That was Mecca there giving his presentation. Now, before we try and dissect his unique experience, or at least the unique experience of international students. What I think I need to get back to was, I appreciate how you talked about e-learning and how you're in Zoom meetings and talking with vice chancellors in order to craft a policy and of course modules, e-learning modules. But from what I heard you say, I heard you say you then will communicate with students and tell them how that's going to work. But you didn't engage them. I don't hear you say, well, we're talking to vice chancellors, we're talking to student bodies, we're talking to students. What we're doing, and this is what we do a lot in this country, we sit somewhere, we make decisions for the poor, we make decisions for people in Lotito, and when we've done that, we go back to them and tell them this is what you're going to do. And we fail phenomenally, and we recant phenomenally. And when the practicality comes, it doesn't work, because our students, we're sitting somewhere and we're making decisions for them, thinking this is going to work. And we're not called. I don't hear where we say we also engaged Zenasu and whatsoever other student bodies, and even the SAYWHATs, to say you're talking to the students. We're trying to come up with this. It's in record time, but we need your voices. And that's what the students are saying. They're saying, thank you for the policies. No, thank you for not coming to us before or during the crafting period.
Let me say this to you. If you know how universities work, what happens is communication with the students does not come from the ministry. It comes from the universities. If I were to show you a document that I have, I've been going through each university and looking at what have they been doing. MSU, they will show you the percentage number of students they have been able to communicate with in the preparations that they are doing. You go to CAT, they also show you the number of students who they have already now managed to hook on, and it goes from one university to the next. So communication has been taking place between university management and the students. We don't communicate with the students at that level. Through their SRCs, through whichever body they have on campus, they communicate. And we are very fortunate because in most of our universities, our students can be reached by email, almost all of them. And so if a student says there have been no communication, yes, that would be a very small percentage, because the information we have is quite a number of them have received communication from their vice chancellors. As for the colleges, I wrote a letter to each of the colleges and I say to them, please, as we continue with these preparations, I want to know that you are engaging the academic staff, the administrative staff, and you are also engaging the student body to let them know what it is that we are planning, so that there is that mental preparedness in terms of the direction that we want to take. We have never been this way before. No nation has ever been this way before. But it takes courage and it takes leadership to be able to walk people in the direction that they have not gone before. And we are trying to do that.
Well, thank you. And I suppose what I just wanted to know was that you at least encourage these not only to give direction or to give pointers that this is what we're about to do, but also to encourage them to continually engage with their students. And Jimmy, you've heard this story from Mecca, and you were an international student in the Netherlands, and that's why I wanted to ask you specifically about your personal experiences. You were in a different resource setup, of course, than he was, but those anxieties, being away from home and being stranded. We're always, stranded in culture shock already as international students. And then comes something as unprecedented as COVID-19. How would you, at least relate with this story and how it tugs the heartstrings?
Well, yes, I can relate in terms of being away from home, studying in a foreign land. However, unfortunately for me, possibly during that time I was studying away, I was not caught in between a pandemic of this nature whereby we would be locked down. But I can say that it's always difficult for you to really study in a foreign land and for you to be uncertain when are you going to be traveling home. That's why earlier on I spoke to Professor relating to the issue of study permits, because I knew when I was studying abroad there, indeed, my study permit was very clear. When I'm going to graduate, when I'm going to finish the studies, and when I'm going to graduate, and when it was my last day in that particular country. Everything was very clear. So I would react differently to anything that will, in a way, jeopardize my program, such that I might end up appearing as if I'm an illegal resident in that particular country. So again, looking at it earlier on, you raised the issue of the issue of when Prof gave an example of his daughter, and he spoke about the issue of equipment. Indeed, currently, it's fortunate that Prof is able to communicate with their daughter through Zoom, etc., which is something that is very difficult right now. Somebody in the morning was telling me that for you to sustain a Zoom conversation, you might need about 140 bond of airtime for you to be able to do that. But you're looking at a student. How is that student going to be able to have 140 bond to be able to communicate? We are also looking at access to college clinics. That is something that I would encourage Prof, when you are having conversations with the vice chancellors, to look into. Students have got some universities and colleges do have medical facility, medical aids that can only work possibly within that particular institution. What happens now when a student wants to access health services when he or she is locked down outside the campus? We need also to really have that into consideration when we are having, when we are planning about these students. We are also looking at students who are studying technical subjects. We are those who are doing woodwork, those who are doing fashion and fabrics, those who are studying brick making. How is e-learning going to impact you in terms of their work? So you need also to really get to understand all those dynamics in terms of the introduction of e-learning and the plight of the students, and also try to consider their health aspects.
Very, very profound that you should mention that, because usually when we look at academics, and students and tertiary education, we think law, we think economics, and then Jimmy brings the brick and the wood, mm-hmm. and the fashion and fabrics, the needles, and as you would say, and that's a very different dynamic, and of course this is also eye-opening. But before I come back to you, Prof, I know you're itching to say something. Just out there to you guys, we're following what you're saying. Of course, Takunda Archlove Tananyanyiwa is saying it could have been better if students were part of the panel. They of course are. They gave those representations that they made, those packages we're going to be seeing, and of course they're in lockdown, so we had to go to them and not them to us. We've also got, as I said, somebody who's going to be calling in. And actually, that caller is from the National University of Science and Technology in Bulawayo. So today we've got something from the Midlands, we've got something from Manicaland, we've got something from Bulawayo. So we're really going out, spreading our tentacles, and we continually do this with SAYWHAT as our partners. And somebody here, Jackson Munyanyiwa, is saying, think of rural students. Yes, we've raised that, and this is something we're also going to be looking at going forward. Sandram Zama says, virtual learning is for the elite. We would like to see a public policy that is inclusive of the poor. And Takunda also says, it's easy when the facilities are there. I'm currently doing research with students. They can't afford a WhatsApp bundle. Don't talk about the students, Tanyanyua, talk about me. I can't afford a WhatsApp bundle. And that's really where we find ourselves.
You know, Robert.
Yes.
Let me start by saying I communicate with my daughter, by the way, using WhatsApp. But also just to say, actually Zoom, the first 40 minutes, you don't pay anything. All the communication I do with my vice chancellors and principals, I don't pay anything. It's free.
So trust the Zimbabwean to know all these hacks. So thank you for
this is the journey we are walking together.
Absolutely.
Yes. I studied outside the country for my first degree. 4 years. I was in Lesotho. And over the holidays, sometimes we would be very few on campus. It happens when you are studying outside your own country. Yes, when put together with a pandemic, it's not easy. And I feel for the student from Manicaland State University. I know the challenges that they are going through, but we want you to know we look after our students, particularly international students. I was a vice chancellor of an international institution at Africa University. Even a few weeks ago, I was there. The place is still teeming with students who could not go home. They are there. The important thing is you know what you are there for. You find out how you occupy yourself. And for the international students who are on campus, I think they are much better because many of them can access reading material from the library. This is the time to catch up with your studies. This is the time to make sure that material which you didn't understand, now we have an opportunity to understand. What are we going to do if we go online learning? There's a lot that we are working on right now. We are working with service providers, internet service providers, and we are saying we want a situation where the websites where we post academic material, a student should be able to access those without paying anything. That's one of the things we're working towards. What about those who need bundles? We're also working to say that we need to have subsidized bundles. And we are working on this. We are putting together a budget, but we are also saying to the telecom companies, please come and team up with us and join us, and let's support our education system, because we are going through an unprecedented time, which we have never gone through before, which we didn't have enough time to prepare for, but we can make it as a nation when we come together. And I want to say that there is already quite a lot of excitement in some of them to say, yes, I think we can do something. Remember, Robert, big universities like University of Zimbabwe, how much do they semester? So what it means is, if those students are not going to be on campus, that money, part of that can be used to reduce the cost of data for our students who will be accessing from outside. Able to teach online. We are working on all those things. These universities, we think now you can start opening up, not open in the sense of going to campus, but open in the sense of continue with teaching and learning. We will be somewhere with our preparations. But let me say this, not every university see they are right up, because I've said to them, each one of you, can you please send us the roadmap to going back to offer lessons and lectures to students? And their roadmaps are not the same, but they are all meant to cater for access these things. They are I don't want to be able to get yes.
Now, the unfortunate thing is there's something I really wanted you to see, and I hope next week when we continue with this discussion, I hope you will be free enough to come back here. Or if not, and I really hope you'll be here, I hope you'll also then follow it, because what we're not going to watch today is we then talked to a student and his mother, because we've also got that component to this matrix. The mother is a hairdresser, and business is obviously at zero. He's a first-year student, 1-2, and he had only just started, very anxious, and now they're in limbo. And they've got a very unique story as well, but they're from Manicaland. But right now, we also went to the Midlands, at the Midlands State University, where South African student Byron was also facing similar trauma to Mecca.
First of all, if you want to go to town, you need to be having this other letter. that gives you access to go to town so that you won't be beaten up by the police, and so that you can avoid the police from telling you go back home and stuff. So for you to access groceries, you need to have this letter they're talking about. And if you don't have this letter, you won't access groceries. Nah, actually the university is closed. I tried going back there. I have all my proof that I'm a student of MSU, but they wouldn't allow me, and I don't know why. For the lockdown, it's like, it's for me, I stay in SA, South Africa. So if I could go back home, the borders were already closed, so that's why I'm stuck here, bro. Obviously, it has procrastinated my future, my destiny and stuff. And obviously, it's like this lockdown, we ain't learning that much. We're only receiving assignments from group chats because some other people can access the e-learning platform, because they have data, they have Wi-Fi and stuff. But I do know it's for me, I can't access those. So learning through assignments, I don't consider that to be useful because I don't even have the Wi-Fi at the moment or the data so that I can research about those things. And some of the things we are being given, we have never learned about those things before. And we don't even have any notes, any source of references for us to answer writing assignments that I don't even understand.
Will. But I'm one of those people who you could give me an assignment, you could give me notes, you're just talking to yourself, but stand in front of me and start speaking, and I'm not taking down a note, I'm just listening to you, I soak it in and I'll never forget it. So as people were saying, and this is a lot of feedback I'm getting, people are saying we learn differently, we understand differently, we acquire knowledge differently, and all those exactly the same way, but they got that information from different talents and gifts of how to soak things up. I will not really want to delve into a lot of what Byron said because, of course, that's a different, we're just showing you how we went to the Midlands and got the same stories, got the same themes, Manicaland as well. And very soon we're going to be listening to a student from NUST, SNUT. We're just going to talk to her briefly because, of course, this has been very exciting, it's very engaging, but the time really doesn't like us, does it? If you're there, Esnat, welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us. It's a pity we couldn't talk to you when we were in Bulawayo, but thank you finally for joining us. You've been following this talk that we've been having, and I know a lot of this has been speaking to you as a person and as a personality. Can you tell us, as a student in Matabeleland, at NUST, what you would want to say to your father of your institution, your permanent secretary, with regards COVID-19 and you as a young person who is obviously affected?
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. I'd like to say that COVID-19 caught everyone by surprise, and students in tertiary institutions are not spared of the crisis. And being a female student, I also have my unique challenges that COVID-19 had an impact on. One of them include access and availability of SRH services and information. So at NUST, we have our college clinic, and we access almost everything at the college clinic, including STI screening, provision of art treatment, and contraception, and other services. So being a female student and being away from such services that I was getting for free or maybe under the medical bill that I pay as a student at NUST, it means that I'm now a burden, or I'm adding on the burden that the family already has, because now they have to provide for those services, and we know that we buy or we access them at a cost. For example, on contraception, if I'm on a pill, I have to buy it at a pharmacy, but at school I was getting it for free. And looking at the issue of e-learning, there are a lot of uncertainties around the issue, and I'm glad that the PEMSEC touched on some of the issues. And thinking of it on paper as the way the PEMSEC is talking about it is so picture perfect. But the reality on the ground is that I am a student and my parents rely on informal sector, and right now they're at zero. I have to buy data and I use Econet. You know what happened last week. The gadgets that we have, they're not conducive for the kind of internet and the requirements for e-learning. So I would want to know if the government has come up with a structure or a system that will cater for a student like me. And to say the least, I'm in Bulawayo in the city. Let's think about a student who is in Binga, who is in Murewa, who don't have internet access, who don't have a gadget, who don't have that data. So in as much as the talk about providing education for all is happening at a higher level in their offices and at ministry level, let us think of a student who is down in the rural setup. And you all know that our population is based in the rural areas than in the urban areas.
Well, Esnat, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for those profound words. You touched on SRHR, and of course you touched on the plight of the rural student and the poor student, and these are themes that are coming to us time and time again. Thank you so much for joining us, and of course I hope you're going to be with us in the next 2 episodes of this series as we continue to find a voice for you and your community.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely. We're back again, Prof. And before we even touch on what she said, we are having Sifiso saying, well, you actually must have touched a nerve with the Ivy League, because she says Ivy League universities in Mzarabani, there is no comparison. A lot of work needs to be done to assist all students in Zimbabwe, especially those in rural areas. COVID-19 is here for keeps. I think we shouldn't have mentioned Ivy League from what I'm saying. People seem to be thinking, well, yeah, but at least that helps us put the things into perspective as to where we are and where we aspire to be anyway, as because we really want the best for our students going forward, and that's our dream, hope, and aspiration for our children, of course. Yes. But she also touched on issues to do with the pill, she says, for example. And we are a lot of men in high offices, and we think of policy and decisions, and we say, in 3 days' time, we are locking down. But we don't know that the menstrual health management issues that will come to the fore. We don't know that there are issues to do with contraception that will come to the fore as well. And when we went to Bulawayo and met the COVID-19 student, she had problems with basics, with food and what have you. Yes. And then when we asked her about menstrual health management, she said that even is becoming something of a luxury, while it is a basic, because everybody who's trying to help is bringing food, beans, salt, and nobody goes there. And she was saying she was going for the traditional methods or the old methods, the rags and what have you, and that impacts on dignity. So when we touch on all those things, I want to come back to you and ask a particular question with regards the mental well-being, because all these things have got a mental burden on the student. What are we going to do going forward to help deal with the mental burden of our students as they face a myriad of problems, all emanating from one horrible, horrible pandemic?
Thank you, Robert. The Ivy League. I hope they don't think I'm paying for my daughter. No, she's actually paying for herself. Let me say, I appreciate what students are going through, and I want them to know that. I fully appreciate, and I know the challenges that they are going through. Number one, you are anxious. You don't know what's going to happen to your studies. Number two, you are thrown into a situation that you did not expect. You had planned that you were going to be on campus for the next 3 months, and then all of a sudden, either you are locked up in a small room in the town where you are studying and you are not able to go to school, or you are back in the rural area where you had said, goodbye, I'm now going into first year. it brings a lot of anxiety, but it also brings a lot of psychosocial issues as far as the student is concerned. And we need to do something about it. And I would say that if you look at the way most of our institutions are set up, they have people who actually are meant to help students. Many of our institutions have the Dean of Student Affairs, and within that, they have programs on wellness. They also bring in people like SAYWHAT and others to come and help the students, because we are going through something we have never gone through before. I watch TV, and the challenges and the pain that our students are going through, you find out it's happening everywhere. We are not unique in any way. So, but we learn from the lessons of others. How do you deal with this situation? And the way to deal with this situation is that we must find ways within our own structures of how do we help each other when we go through a situation like this? How do we help our students? How do we ensure eventually when they come back to campus, we have an opportunity to have them tell what they have gone through so that they are able to download that which they have been bottling all the time. The student from South Sudan who is holed up in Manicaland is not sure when he's going to finish his school. Everybody else is gone. Naturally, he's bound to be anxious and to have he needs a lot of counseling. But that's why we have people to help with counseling in our institutions. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. This is not an easy situation. But what I want to say to you is we are a people of resolve as Zimbabweans. And I think we will be able to overcome. Yes, we don't have the wherewithal that other people have to get through, but we are going to be very creative. I say this because just a few days ago, one academic from HIT came to me and said, I have produced something that I think will help students who can't access Wi-Fi. And I said, these are the kinds of creativity that's going to help this country going forward. Everybody comes up with one way of helping the students. Some are going to come with ways of helping the student mentally, psychologically. Another organization will come with a way of helping the student to connect or even to download materials. For those who say, I want to see the lecturer in front of me, there are ways in which you can have those lectures brought to that particular student so that they are able to go through them over and over again.
Absolutely.
So it's not going to be easy, but we need all to be prepared and ready to do things that we have never done before.
Now, Prof, you talked about the Dean of Students, and you talked about assistants, and you talked about how things are we've got structures to help students. Of course, they will be overwhelmed because this is something that is unprecedented. But let's see somebody at the Manicaland University of Applied Sciences, and that's the Dean, actually, who we got to talk to. And he actually echoes what you were saying and has the same words of encouragement for Zimbabwe's students.
To say certainly, as a nation, as a human race, we will certainly, win this thing eventually. We don't know when or how, but I know that, with resolve, with persistence, with hope, with prayer, we will conquer this COVID-19 pandemic. So we should not lose hope, and I think the president was clear when he said, the main thing that we should preserve is life. So if the lockdown does continue, it's for the good because we're trying to preserve life, and it gives us an opportunity, like I said, to reimagine and reinvent our systems, even economic systems, That's the model that we've been using, which is mainly, of course, capitalist in nature. Is it still relevant? It's time to question that. Let's start looking at some of our own indigenous knowledge systems, the way we lived before, So it's really a time for Africa and for Zimbabweans to, everyone has been equalized. So I'm encouraging, the nation, encouraging our students especially to say, guys, we've got an opportunity here, to reinvent and reimagine things and be the first, on different levels.
I heard you say exactly, and then I knew that somebody has already got a raise. So there he is. He's speaking the same language as you, and he's giving his words of encouragement to, of course, the rest of the country, to the students. But before I wrap up, I just want to ask two very quick questions. Do we know yet when our colleges are reopening, our universities are reopening, and what's the state of especially the university classes that are supposed to be writing their final exams and graduating? Do we have that knowledge yet?
If you remember what His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, said in his speech, that we will be informed on the next steps going forward. And we are waiting for those announcements to come. And of course, it will depend on the circumstances on the ground. One thing I've learned is I've learned to trust and to know that when the president says it's not yet time, it's not yet time. And he was very clear. The most important thing is to preserve life.
Preserve life,
yes.
as the dean said.
Yes.
So, okay.
He was very clear. So I don't know, but I know that going forward, the president will make pronouncements on what it is and what level we are at and what can happen. Maybe the next level is that academic staffs can now go back to their offices and start preparing so that they can start preparing for the students. We don't know. But we know that whatever happens is for the good of this nation, and we must all be in full support of that.
Absolutely. So, but what we also do know here at Zimbabwe's television network is we're going to be getting yet another pronouncement from the president this weekend, and that's anytime from tomorrow, and that's when we'll be hearing what the state of the nation is with regards to COVID. So yes, we are still waiting for a signal. Now, just your parting shots as we go forward, Jimmy, what do you have to say to students out there to speak to their anxiety and also to encourage their dreams, hopes and aspirations?
My major encouragement is to the professor. He spoke passionately about how he's in contact with the vice chancellors. I didn't hear him mentioning about his contacts with the principals of polytechnics, principals of teachers' colleges, etc. Right now, high schools, they are arranging opening. We have got students who are learning to be teachers in the teachers' colleges who are supposed to go on job learning, on teaching attachment. What is their status? What is going to happen? They've got so much anxiety. Even you look at patient 21. Patient 21 is a student in one of the teachers' colleges. She's supposed to go on teaching practice right now. She's confused. She doesn't know what is going to happen. Yes, in as much as she's doing all her best to ensure that she gets healed, but she has got anxiety around that. So there is need again to consider that those students who are in the polytechnics, those who are in the teachers' colleges. And more importantly, you spoke again about how the universities have convinced you that they are communicating with their students, and you suggested that possibly those students who are saying they are confused on what is going to happen, the number is quite low. There is need again to recheck on that in terms of making sure that there is real communication with the students. The universities are communicating with their students, and also when you're looking at polytechnics, teachers' colleges, they are communicating with their students. Because some of the college authorities, they are confused. They are simply saying, we are waiting for the ministry to give us a signal. So there must be that, we must get rid of the information asymmetry such that the anxiety within the students is actually addressed to the students. It's equally important to even listen to what Dean Chaka said. Even Dean Chaka yesterday was with the students online, encouraging them to make use of this time wisely, to self-introspect and find ways of doing things in a different way. So all hope is not lost. We are going to conquer COVID-19. All we need to do is to stay safe and to ensure that we wear our masks and we respect social distance.
Absolutely. And to you, Prof.
My parting words are to say to the student, the Minister of Higher Education, and the whole ministry, and the university vice chancellors and college principals are seized with the matter of making sure that the student continues to learn. And we want you to know, day and night, we are thinking about what will happen to that student who is out in the rural areas. How are we going to ensure that they have access? They can also have the same quality of education as everybody else. But I say to the students, to the academic members of staff, the odds may be great, but let our resolve to succeed be greater than the odds. We've never walked this before, but these are the challenges. Every time when you have an extraordinary challenge, there are opportunities that you should try and exploit. And we are already seeing some of those opportunities. I was saying to our staff, we have never thought of equipping our institutions to be able to offer training. I was saying, if, for example, at NAST they don't have a professor in something, when we finish this whole process, it should be possible that a student can be at Chinhoyi University of Technology and take a class at NAST or take a class at UZ. These are opportunities we are already seeing that will come out of what we are trying to put in place for the students while they are at home.
So there's always an opportunity, and
There's always.
And that's what also Dean Chaka said when he said, well, let's seize this moment and look at that silver lining. And of course, we are also looking at that silver lining here at ZTN as we continue to give you up-to-date information on COVID. We've got our news blitz that shall be coming on later on. And of course, I'll be joining you yet again on Diplomatic Passport as we give you updates on the COVID-19 around the world, in our region, and of course, in Zimbabwe. And I must say, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. This has been very, very engaging. And thank you so much, Prof. By far, one of the best interactions I've had on Heartbeat. And thank you for gifting me with that. So on that note, I really encourage you to keep going if you're a student, and keep strong, because we are a very resilient people, because we build a people of power, a nation of praise that will move in this land by the spirit of being a Zimbabwean and glorify that special and precious flag and name that we call Zimbabwe. So from me, Robert Mkandiwa, and from the crew behind the scenes and everybody here at Heartbeat, stay safe, stay at home.